You're watching Cold Blood Empire original story. Everly Clark was never supposed to survive. When an Omega refuses her fated mate, the world doesn't scream. It closes doors. It lowers its voice. And it waits. Locked beneath stone and forgotten by those in power, Everly learns that hunger doesn't kill quickly. It teaches patience. It teaches silence. It teaches how to disappear. But fate makes one mistake. It lets the Alpha King walk past her cell, and when he hears her weak cry for help, everything the realm believed about obedience, fate, and power begins to fracture. Hey, quick question. How are you feeling right now? Thank you so much for being here. It truly means the world to me. I'm working toward 10,000 subscribers, and if Everly's story is already pulling at your heart, please hit that subscribe button for Cold Blood Empire. Smash the like, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. Alright, now let us return to the moment Everly Clark stopped screaming and began surviving. Everly Clark stopped screaming long before she stopped hoping. Hope was quieter. Hope was dangerous. The cell was cold. Damp stone pressed against her back, unforgiving and ancient. The smell of iron lingered in the stale air, metallic and sharp enough to coat the back of her throat. Her wrists burned where the iron cuffs dug into skin already worn raw. Every small movement sent fire shooting up her arms. She had stopped testing the chains days ago. Or weeks. Time didn't move properly down here. Her throat was dry enough that swallowing hurt. Each breath felt shallow, as though her lungs had forgotten how to expand fully. Hunger had stopped being sharp. It no longer clawed at her stomach in urgent waves. Now it simply existed dull, endless, part of her bones. Somewhere between one shallow breath and the next, her stomach growled. Loudly enough to offend her. Traitor, she thought weakly. Even now, part of her mind clung to absurd things. Like how, if she was going to die, she wished it wouldn't be while looking this unflattering. Her hair hung in greasy tangles. Her dress, once a soft cream color, was stained with dirt, and worse. She probably smelled terrible. Death should at least allow for dignity. Apparently, it didn't. She had refused her fated mate. Refused to be owned. And for that, the council had decided she needed time to reflect. Everly decided that if she survived this, she would never again trust a council that believed reflection worked better than food. The memory came unbidden, sliding into her mind with cruel clarity. Caden Cummings had stood before her in the great hall, handsome and composed, his dark eyes steady. The council surrounded them, Cassandra Hansen with her sharp gaze, Bria Arroyo with her tight smile, Silas Chambers with his careful neutrality. Caden had extended his hand. "The bond calls to you, Everly," he said smoothly. "Accept what fate has given us." She had looked at his hand, then at his face, then at the council members watching with expectation. "No," she said simply. The room had gone silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from shock, the kind that comes from inevitability. Cassandra had spoken first, her voice measured. "Perhaps Miss Clark needs time to consider the gravity of refusing a fated bond." "I don't need time," Everly replied. "I need a choice." Bria's smile tightened further. "You have a choice, dear. Accept the bond fate has blessed you with, or face the consequences of defying natural order." "Natural order," Everly repeated slowly. "Is that what we're calling it?" Silas cleared his throat. "Miss Clark, you must understand." "I understand perfectly," she interrupted. "You want me to submit because it's easier than questioning whether fate should override will." Caden's expression hadn't changed. That was what frightened her most. He wasn't angry. He was patient. Confidence. He believed she would break. "Take her below," Cassandra said quietly. "Give her time to reflect on her decision." No one had protested. No one had asked questions. Guards had simply stepped forward, and Everly's hands were bound. She remembered walking down the stairs. I remembered the sound of the door closing, the scrape of the lock, the silence that followed. That was, she didn't know how long ago. Days blurred together in the dark. She had screamed at first, called for help, demanded to be heard. No one came. Eventually, she stopped wasting her energy. Hope, though. Hope was harder to silence. It flickered stubbornly in the back of her mind, refusing to die even when logic insisted it should. Everly shifted slightly, her shoulder pressing against the cold wall. The movement made her dizzy. She closed her eyes and waited for the sensation to pass. When she opened them again, nothing had changed. Stone, darkness, cold. Her stomach growled again. "I heard you for the first time," she whispered. Her voice sounded strange, rough, like it belonged to someone else. She wondered if anyone would notice when she died. Probably not. That was the point, wasn't it? Omegas who refused their fated mates didn't get trials. They didn't get announcements. They simply disappeared, and the realm moved on as though they had never existed. A warning to others. Stay silent. Stay obedient. Stay alive. Everly closed her eyes again. Somewhere far above, she imagined the keep was warm. People were eating, laughing, living. She tried to remember what bread tasted like. Her mind offered her nothing. She tried to remember the last time someone had touched her gently. Still nothing. Just cold. Just silence. Just the slow, patient certainty that no one was coming. And yet, hope. Dangerous, stubborn hope. It whispered that maybe, just maybe, someone would hear her. Everly took a breath, then another. She wasn't screaming anymore, but she was still breathing. And for now, that had to be enough. The council met in a room lined with dark wood and soft candlelight. Cassandra Hansen sat at the head of the table, her fingers steepled beneath her chin. Bria Arroyo sat to her left, sorting through papers with the kind of precision that suggested she enjoyed order. Silas Chambers occupied the seat to Cassandra's right, his expression carefully neutral. Caden Cummings stood near the window, looking out over the courtyard. "She's been down there for 2 weeks," Bria said without looking up. "Surely that's sufficient time for reflection." "Reflection requires the ability to think clearly," Cassandra replied. "Hunger clouds judgment." Silas shifted in his seat. "We should consider..." "Consider what?" Cassandra's gaze cut to him. "Releasing her before she's learned the lesson?" "I merely suggest we be cautious," Silas said carefully. "If the Alpha King returns and discovers..." "The Alpha King is handling border disputes," Caden interrupted smoothly, turning from the window. "He won't return for at least another week. Possibly 2. Cassandra nodded. "Precisely. We have time." Bria set down her quill. "And when will he return? What do we tell him?" "The truth," Cassandra said. An Omega became unstable, dangerous to herself and others. We acted to protect the keep. Silas frowned. Everly Clark was never dangerous. She refused a fated bond, Bria said sharply. That kind of defiance spreads. If other Omegas begin to believe they can reject fate, then what? Silas asked. They make their own choices? The room went quiet. Caden moved away from the window, his steps measured. Everly will accept the bond. She simply needs to understand that resistance is futile. And if she doesn't? Silas pressed. Caden's smile was small, confident. She will. Cassandra leaned back in her chair. The girl has spirit. I'll grant her that. But a spirit without power is just noise. She's Omega, Bria added. She has no standing, no family to advocate for her, no allies. Exactly, Cassandra said. Which is why this will resolve quietly. Silas looked between them, his discomfort visible. And if it doesn't, it will, Caden said firmly. Trust me. Below, in the dark, Everly had no idea the council was discussing her fate. She only knew that no one had brought food. No one had brought water. No one had come at all. Her mind drifted. She thought about the day she first met Caden. He was charming, polite, everything an Omega was supposed to want in a mate. But his eyes had looked at her the way someone might look at a possession. Not cruelly, just inevitably. As though her consent was a formality, she had felt the bond pull at her, faint and insistent. It whispered in the back of her mind, urging her to accept, to submit, to let fate decide. But fate hadn't asked her what she wanted, and Everly had spent her entire life being told what she should want. So when Caden extended his hand, she looked at it and realized something. She would rather die free than live owned, even if freedom meant cold stone and iron cuffs, even if it meant hunger, even if it meant disappearing. Her stomach twisted painfully. She pressed her palm against it, as though the pressure might help. It didn't. Everything aches now. Her wrists, her shoulders, her ribs. She could feel her body eating itself, consuming what little reserves remained. Soon there wouldn't be anything left. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt distant, like something happening to someone else. Everly closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Sleep didn't come easily anymore, but eventually, exhaustion won. Above, the council meeting adjourned. Cassandra stood, smoothing her skirts. We reconvene in 3 days. By then, Miss Clark should be more receptive. Bria nodded. And if she's not? Cassandra's expression didn't change. Then we extend her reflection period. Caden watched them leave, then turned back to the window. He wasn't worried. Everly would break. They always did. If this part of the story is making you angry, good. It's supposed to. Stories like Everly's exist because silence lets cruelty hide behind tradition. If you're invested, tap the like button so YouTube knows this story matters. And subscribe to Cold Blood Empire if you want a more dark, emotional wolf romance where the forgotten are finally seen. Silence had always been the Council's greatest weapon. And soon, that silence would be broken. Because the Alpha King was returning, Ellis Baxter returned to the keep on a gray afternoon. The journey had been long, the negotiations tedious. Border disputes were never simple, and wolves from neighboring territories had tested his patience more than once. But the matter was settled. For now, he dismounted in the courtyard, handing the reins to a stable hand who avoided his gaze. Ellis noticed. He always noticed. The keep felt wrong. Not obviously. Not in a way he could point to and name. But wrong. The guards stood too stiffly. The servants moved too quickly. Eyes slid away when he passed. Ellis walked through the main hall, his boots echoing on stone. Cassandra appeared at the top of the stairs, descending with practiced grace. Alpha King, she greeted warmly. Welcome home. We didn't expect you for another week. The matter was resolved faster than anticipated, Ellis said, his tone even. I trust everything here has been calm. Perfectly calm, Cassandra assured him. No incidents, no disruptions. Ellis studied her face. Cassandra met his gaze without flinching. Good, he said finally. She smiled. You must be exhausted. Shall I have a meal prepared? In a moment. He continued walking, leaving her on the stairs. Something was off. Ellis trusted his instincts. They had kept him alive through wars, betrayals, and political maneuvering. And right now, his instincts were screaming. He moved through the corridors slowly, observing. A guard shifted his weight nervously as Ellis passed. A servant dropped her gaze too quickly. Bria Arroyo appeared from a side hall, her smile bright. Alpha King. What a pleasant surprise. Miss Arroyo, I hope your journey was successful. It was. She waited, clearly expecting him to elaborate. He didn't. Her smile tightened slightly. Well, if you need anything, I'll let you know. He moved past her. Bria's cheerfulness felt forced, rehearsed. Ellis's jaw tightened. He turned down the eastern corridor, the one that led to the older sections of the keep. This part was quieter, less trafficked. His footsteps slowed. He wasn't sure why. Just something. Ellis stopped, listened. At first, there was nothing. Then, a sound, faint, barely audible, a whisper of breath, a weak, broken sound that slipped through stone like a ghost. Ellis's entire body went still. He turned his head, trying to pinpoint the source. There, below. He moved to the wall, pressing his palm against the cold stone. The sound came again, softer this time, almost gone. Ellis's eyes narrowed. There were cells beneath this section. Old ones, rarely used. He hadn't authorized anyone to be held there. His hand dropped from the wall. His expression remained calm, but inside, something cold and sharp settled into place. Ellis turned and walked back the way he came, his stride measured. When he reached the main hall, he found a guard stationed near the entrance. "You," Ellis said quietly. The guard straightened. "Yes, Alpha King? The eastern cells. Are they occupied?" The guard's face went pale. I don't... Are they occupied?" Ellis repeated, his voice still calm. "I would need to check the records." "Then check them." The guard hesitated. "Sir, Ellis's gaze didn't waver. "Now." The guard fled. Ellis waited. 5 minutes later, the guard returned, accompanied by Cassandra. "Alpha King," she said smoothly. "There seems to be some confusion. Are the eastern cells occupied?" Ellis asked. Cassandra's expression remained composed. "We have been housing a troubled individual for her own safety. Her name, Everly Clark." Ellis's jaw tightened. "On whose authority?" "The Council's," Cassandra said. She became unstable, dangerous to herself, and "I gave no such order." "You were not here," Cassandra replied carefully. "We acted in your absence to protect the keep." Ellis's voice dropped. "Take me to her." Cassandra hesitated. "Perhaps it would be better to..." Now, the door to the eastern cells was locked. Ellis stood before it, his expression unreadable. Cassandra hovered nearby, her composure beginning to crack. "Alpha King, I assure you, this was done with the best intentions. Open it." The guard fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking. The lock resisted. Ellis's patience evaporated. He gripped the handle and pulled. The iron groaned, then snapped. The door swung open, and the smell hit him first. Damp stone, unwashed skin, sickness. Ellis stepped inside. The cell was small, dark, cold, and in the corner, curled against the wall, was Everly. She was so still, he thought, for one terrible moment, that he was too late. Then her chest rose, barely. Ellis crossed the space in 2 strides and dropped to his knees beside her. Her wrists were shackled, raw and bleeding where the iron had worn through skin. Her face was pale, hollowed by hunger. Her lips were cracked and dry, but her eyes opened, slowly, unfocused at first. Then they found his face. "You're late," she whispered, her voice hoarse and broken. "But still my favorite person today." Ellis froze. For half a breath, he didn't move. Then he reached for the shackles and tore them apart with his bare hands. Everly flinched at the sound, then went limp. Ellis caught her before she could fall, gathering her carefully into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. He could feel every bone. His jaw clenched so tightly it ached. Everly's head lolled against his shoulder. "If you're rescuing me," she murmured, "you should know. I probably smell terrible." Ellis held her closer. "I don't care." Her eyes fluttered closed. "Good. Because I definitely do." He stood, cradling her against his chest. Behind him, Cassandra spoke quickly. "Alpha King, if you'll allow me to explain." Ellis turned. His expression was calm, terrifyingly calm. "You will wait in the council chamber," he said quietly. "All of you." Cassandra paled. "Of course. But I must stress." "Wait." He walked past her without another word. Everly stirred slightly in his arms. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere warm." "Warm sounds nice," she whispered. "I forgot what that felt like." Ellis's grip tightened. He carried her through the corridors, ignoring the stares, the whispers. Let them look. Let them see what their silence had allowed. Everly's breathing evened out, her body relaxing against his. The scent of pine and cold air surrounded her, clean and strong, safe. For the first time in weeks, Everly felt safe. Her fingers curled weakly against his chest. "You're real, right?" "Yes." "Good," she breathed. "Because if you're dreaming, you're doing an excellent job." Ellis looked down at her, his expression softening just slightly. "Rest." "Trying," she murmured. "But my brain keeps insisting this can't be real." "It's real," she smiled faintly. "Then I'm very grateful you have terrible timing. Another day and I would have missed you entirely." Ellis said nothing, but he held her a little closer, and silently vowed that no one would ever touch her again. Ellis carried Everly into the council chamber. The room fell silent. Cassandra stood near the table, Bria beside her. Silas looked pale and uneasy. Caden stood near the far wall, his expression carefully neutral. Ellis walked to the center of the room and stopped. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I will ask this once," he said evenly. "Why was she locked up?" Silence. No one spoke. Ellis nodded slowly. "Wrong answer." Cassandra stepped forward. "Alpha King, with respect." "This was a matter of respect," Ellis repeated softly. "You believe locking an Omega in a cell and starving her is respectful?" "She refused her fated mate," Bria interjected. "She was becoming a danger." "To whom?" Bria faltered. To the natural order. If Omegas begin to believe they can defy fate, then they might believe they have choices," Ellis finished. "Is that what frightens you?" Caden spoke from the wall. "Alpha King, the bond between Everly and myself is fated. The council acted to preserve." "The council," Ellis interrupted, his gaze shifting to Caden, "does not have the authority to imprison without trial, nor does a fated bond override consent." Caden's expression hardened. "Fate chose her for me." "Fate," Ellis said quietly, "does not grant you ownership." The air in the room grew heavy. Cassandra cleared her throat. "This is an unfortunate misunderstanding." "No," Ellis said. "This is deliberate cruelty disguised as tradition." He looked down at Everly, still unconscious in his arms, then back at the council. "From this moment forward, no Omega will be imprisoned for refusing a bond. No wolf will be punished for choosing their own path. And anyone who believes otherwise will answer to me personally." Bria opened her mouth to protest. Ellis's gaze cut to her. She closed it. "This meeting is over," Ellis said. He turned and walked out, carrying Everly with him. Behind him, the council stood in stunned silence. Cassandra's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed her skirts. Silas exhaled slowly, relief and guilt warring on his face. Caden's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Ellis brought Everly to his private chambers. The room was warm. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting golden light across thick rugs and comfortable furniture. He laid her carefully on the bed, pulling furs over her frail body. Her breathing was shallow but steady. Ellis stepped back, watching her for a long moment. Then he called for a healer. "Take a second and breathe with me. If you're still here, it means this story has you, and that means everything. Please drop a comment telling me what you think of Ellis so far, or how you felt when Everly was carried into the council chamber. I read every single one, and if you haven't yet, subscribe to Cold Blood Empire so you don't miss what happens when protection turns into something far more dangerous and far more tender." All right. Justice did not arrive with shouting or spectacle. It arrived quietly, and for Everly Clark, that changed everything. Everly woke to warmth. It was the first thing she noticed. Not cold, not stone. Warmth. Soft fabric against her skin. The crackle of fire. The faint scent of pine. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking against the golden light. A ceiling. Wood beams. Clean. Whole. Not a cell. Her heart stuttered. She tried to sit up, but her body refused. Every muscle ached. Her arms felt like they belonged to someone else. "Easy." The voice was low, steady. Everly turned her head. Ellis sat in a chair beside the bed, his posture relaxed but his gaze sharp. "You," she whispered. Me. I thought you were dreaming. I'm not. She stared at him, her mind struggling to catch up. Where am I? My chambers. Her eyes widened slightly. That seems improper. Ellis's mouth twitched. You're recovering. From what? From what? Starvation, dehydration, infection from the shackles. Everly looked down at her wrists. They were bandaged, clean. The iron cuffs were gone. Relief flooded through her so suddenly she felt tears prick her eyes. Hey, Ellis said quietly. You're safe. She nodded, not trusting her voice. A knock sounded at the door. Ellis rose and opened it, returning a moment later with a tray. He set it on the table beside the bed. Steam rose from a bowl of broth. Everly's stomach twisted painfully at the sight. Slowly, Ellis said, sitting back down. Your body isn't ready for much yet. He lifted the bowl and held it toward her. Everly tried to take it, but her hands shook too badly. Ellis didn't comment. He simply brought the spoon to her lips. She hesitated. It's just broth, he said gently. She parted her lips and let him feed her. The warmth spread through her chest, down into her stomach. It was the most wonderful thing she had ever tasted. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Ellis paused. Does it hurt? No, she whispered. It's perfect. He resumed feeding her, his movements careful and unhurried. When the bowl was half empty, Everly shook her head. I can't. That's enough for now. He set the bowl aside. Everly wiped at her face, embarrassed. I apologize. For what? Crying, over soup. Ellis's expression softened. You have nothing to apologize for. She looked at him. Really looked at him. Strong jaw, dark eyes, calm in a way that felt unshakable. Why did you come looking for me? She asked quietly. I heard you. I barely made a sound. I know. Everly frowned. That doesn't make sense. No, Ellis agreed. It doesn't. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Everly said, Thank you. You don't need to thank me. I do, she insisted. You saved my life. Ellis's jaw tightened. I should have been here sooner. You didn't know. I should have. Everly studied him. You're angry. Yes. At me? No, he said firmly. Never at you. She believed him. For reasons she couldn't explain, she believed him completely. Ellis stood. You should rest. Will you stay? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Ellis looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. Yes, he said quietly. I'll stay. He returned to the chair, settling in as though he had no intention of leaving. Everly's eyes grew heavy. The warmth, the food, safety. It was too much. Her body surrendered to sleep. But before she drifted off completely, she heard Ellis speak. You're safe now, he said softly. I promise. And for the first time in weeks, Everly believed in promises again. The next morning, Ellis was still there. Everly woke to find him reading near the window, early light spilling across his shoulders. He looked up when she stirred. How do you feel? Like I was locked in a cell and starved, she said dryly. Ellis's mouth twitched. Fair. He brought her more broth. This time, her hands were steadier. She managed 3 spoonfuls before handing it back. Progress, Ellis said. Thrilling progress, Everly muttered. He almost smiled. Over the next few days, a routine formed. Ellis brought her food, helped her sit up, changed her bandages with the healer's guidance. He didn't hover, but he also never left her alone for long. Everly found herself watching him when he wasn't looking. The way he moved, the way he listened, the way he spoke, calm, measured, but with an undercurrent of authority that made people straighten. He was unexpected. Why are you doing this? She asked one evening. Ellis glanced up from the book he was reading. Doing what? Take care of me. You're the Alpha King. Surely you have more important things. There's nothing more important. The certainty in his voice stopped her. Everly looked away, uncomfortable with the weight of his attention. "I'm nobody," she said quietly. "Just an Omega who refused a bond." "You're not nobody." She laughed bitterly. "The Council disagrees." "The Council," Ellis said evenly, "is wrong." Everly met his gaze. He didn't look away. "You don't have to stand," he said after a moment. She blinked. "What? You look like you're trying to prove something. You don't have to." Everly realized she was sitting rigidly, her spine straight despite the pain. She relaxed slightly. "I wasn't planning to." Ellis looked absurdly relieved. "Despite everything." Everly smiled. It felt strange on her face, but not bad. On the fourth day, Everly was strong enough to bathe. Ellis had a tub brought to his chambers, filled with hot water and scented oils. "I'll leave you," he said, moving toward the door. "Wait." He stopped, turning back. Everly bit her lip. I don't think I can do it alone." Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Ellis's expression remained carefully neutral. "I can call a servant." "No," she said quickly. "I don't want. I don't know them." Ellis understood. After weeks of being vulnerable and powerless, the thought of strangers seeing her like this was unbearable. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll help." He moved to the tub, testing the water temperature. Everly stood on shaky legs, her fingers fumbling with the ties of the simple shift she wore. Ellis turned his back, giving her privacy. "I'm decent," she said softly once she'd slipped into the water. He turned, keeping his gaze respectful. The water came up to her shoulders, hiding most of her body, but Everly still felt exposed. Ellis knelt beside the tub, reaching for a cloth. "May I?" he asked. She nodded. He dipped the cloth in the water and began to gently wash her shoulders. His touch was careful, reverent. Everly closed her eyes, letting herself relax into the warmth. "Your hair," Ellis said after a moment. "Would you like me to wash it?" "Please." He worked soap through the tangled strands, his fingers gentle as they worked out knots. Everly's breath hitched. Not from pain, from the simple kindness of being cared for. "Does it hurt?" Ellis asked immediately. "No," she whispered. "It feels nice." Ellis continued, massaging her scalp with slow, deliberate movements. Everly felt tension she didn't know she was carrying begin to melt away. When he rinsed her hair, warm water cascaded down her back. She shivered. Ellis noticed. "Too cold?" "No. Perfect." He helped her wash the rest of herself, always keeping his touch respectful, his gaze averted when necessary. But there were moments when his fingers lingered just slightly on her skin, moments when their eyes met and neither looked away, moments when the air between them felt charged with something neither was ready to name. When the water began to cool, Ellis brought a thick towel and held it up, turning his back again. Everly stood slowly, wrapping herself in the soft fabric. "Thank you," she said quietly. Ellis turned. "You're welcome." Their eyes met, and for the first time, Everly felt something other than gratitude. She felt desire. Small, tentative, but real. Ellis seemed to sense it. His jaw tightened slightly, and he took a careful step back. "I'll get you clean clothes," he said, his voice rougher than usual. He left the room quickly. Everly stood there, her heart racing, wondering what exactly was happening between them. That night, Ellis sat too close. Not inappropriately. Just close. Close enough that Everly could feel the warmth radiating from him. Close enough to catch his scent, pine and cold air, and something uniquely him. She shifted slightly, trying to put distance between them. Ellis noticed. "That's not helping," she murmured. "I know," he admitted, but he didn't move. Everly's heart beat faster. "Why are you sitting there?" "Because if I sit anywhere else, I can't hear you breathe." She stared at him. I know," he said again. Everly didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing, but she was acutely aware of every inch between them, every breath, every small movement. "Ellis," she said softly. Yes. What are we doing? He looked at her, his dark eyes searching hers. I don't know, he admitted, but I don't want to stop. Everly's breath caught. Neither do I. Ellis reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed against her cheek, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was electric. Everly leaned into it without thinking. Ellis's eyes darkened. Everly, he said, his voice low. If I'm reading this wrong, you're not. He closed his eyes briefly, as though gathering control. When he opened them, the intensity there made her shiver. You're still recovering, he said. We shouldn't. I know what I want, Everly interrupted. Do you? Yes. Ellis's hand dropped from her face. Then tell me. Everly took a breath. I want you to kiss me. For a moment, Ellis didn't move. Then he leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. She didn't. Their lips met. Soft, gentle. A question and an answer all at once. Everly sighed against his mouth, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders. Ellis deepened the kiss gradually, his tongue tracing the seam of her lips. She opened for him. The kiss turned heated. Ellis's hand slid into her hair, cradling her head as he kissed her thoroughly. Everly had never been kissed like this. Like she mattered. Like she was precious. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ellis rested his forehead against hers. We should stop, he said. Should we? You're still healing. I feel fine. Everly, please, she whispered. Don't send me away. Ellis pulled back to look at her. I would never, he said fiercely. Never. Then stay with me. I am. No, she said. Stay with me. Tonight. Ellis's eyes widened. Everly, I don't want to be alone, she said softly. And I trust you. Ellis looked tortured. I won't touch you, he said finally. Not like that. Not until you're stronger. I don't need you to protect me from yourself, Everly said. I just need you here. Ellis studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. That night, Ellis lay beside her on top of the furs, fully clothed. Everly curled against his side, her head on his shoulder. His arm came around her, holding her close. Is this all right? He asked quietly. Perfect. They lay in silence for a while, listening to the fire crackle. Ellis? Why do you care about me? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, Because when I heard you in that cell, something in me recognized something in you. What? Strength, he said simply. You were dying, and you still had a fight left. That's rare. Everly closed her eyes. I don't feel strong. You are. How do you know? Because you're still here. Everly felt tears prick her eyes. She pressed closer to him, and Ellis held her tighter. Sleep, he murmured. I'm not going anywhere. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Everly fell asleep, feeling completely safe. The next morning, she woke to Ellis watching her. That's not creepy at all, she murmured sleepily. He smiled. You talk in your sleep. Her eyes flew open. I do not. You do. What did I say? Nothing embarrassing, Ellis assured her. Mostly you just made small sounds. Everly groaned and buried her face in his shoulder. Ellis laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Come on, he said, stroking her hair. Time for breakfast. I don't want to move. You need to eat. Make me. Ellis's eyes gleamed. Is that a challenge? Before she could respond, he scooped her up effortlessly. Everly squeaked. Put me down. You said to make you. I didn't mean literally. But she was laughing, and so was he. Ellis carried her to the table and set her down gently in a chair. He brought her food more than broth this time. Bread, eggs, fruit. Everly's stomach growled loudly. Traitor, she muttered. Ellis grinned. Eat. She did. And with every bite, she felt herself growing stronger. Not just physically, but in every way that mattered. On the 7th day, Everly could walk without tiring. Ellis took her to the garden again. The flowers were in full bloom now, vibrant and alive. Everly breathed deeply, her eyes closing. When she opened them, Ellis was watching her with an expression that made her heart race. "What?" she asked. "You're beautiful." She blinked. "I'm still too thin. My hair's a mess. I have dark circles." "You're beautiful," Ellis repeated firmly. Everly looked away, flustered. Ellis stepped closer. "Everly," she met his gaze. "I want to court you," he said. "Properly, with your permission." Her breath caught. "Court me?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I care about you," Ellis said. "Because I want to know everything about you. Because when I'm near you, I feel more." Everly's heart pounded. "I'm Omega," she said. "You're Alpha King. People will talk. Let them. It could damage your authority." "I don't care." "Ellis, do you want this?" he interrupted. "Do you want me?" Everly looked into his eyes and knew the answer. "Yes." Ellis smiled, and then he kissed her again. This time, there was no hesitation, no holding back, just pure, unfiltered want. Everly melted into him, her arms winding around his neck. Ellis's hands spanned her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss went from sweet to scorching in seconds. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ellis pressed his forehead to hers. "I want you," he said roughly. "But not until you're ready. Truly ready." "I am ready," Everly said. "You're still recovering." "I'm fine." "Everly." She pulled back and looked at him seriously. "Ellis, I spent weeks locked in darkness, wondering if I would ever feel alive again. Right now, with you, I feel more alive than I ever have. Don't make me wait." Ellis's control visibly cracked. "You're sure?" "Yes." His eyes darkened with need. "Then come with me." He took her hand and led her back to his chambers. Ellis closed the door behind them and locked it. The sound echoed in the quiet room. Everly's heart raced. Ellis turned to face her, his expression intense. "Last chance to change your mind," he said. "I'm not changing my mind." He crossed to her in 3 strides and cupped her face. "Tell me if I hurt you," he said. "Tell me if you want me to stop. Tell me anything, and I will listen." "I will," she promised. Ellis kissed her. Deep, consuming. His tongue swept into her mouth, tasting her thoroughly. Everly moaned, her fingers tangling in his hair. Ellis's hand slid down her sides, learning her curves. When his thumb brushed the underside of her breast, Everly gasped. Ellis pulled back. "Too much?" "Not enough," she breathed. His eyes flared. He pulled her dress over her head in one smooth motion, leaving her in nothing but a thin shift. Everly reached for his shirt, fumbling with the laces. Ellis helped her, stripping it off and tossing it aside. Everly stared. Broad shoulders, defined chest, scars that spoke of battles survived. She reached out and traced one scar across his ribs. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "Not anymore." She leaned in and kissed it. Ellis's breath hissed out. "Everly." She kissed another scar, then another. Ellis's control shattered. He lifted her and carried her to the bed, laying her down gently. Then he covered her body with his, careful not to crush her. The feel of his weight, his warmth, made Everly dizzy with want. Ellis kissed her jaw, her throat, the sensitive spot behind her ear. Everly arched beneath him. "Please," she whispered. "Please what?" "Touch me." Ellis's hand slid beneath her shift, finding her breast. He cupped it gently, his thumb brushing over her nipple. Everly cried out. "Sensitive," Ellis murmured approvingly. He did it again, and she writhed. Ellis lowered his head and took her nipple into his mouth through the thin fabric. Everly's hands fisted in the furs. He sucked gently, then harder, until she was panting. When he switched to the other breast, Everly thought she might combust. "Ellis," she gasped. "I need..." I know what you need. His hand slid lower, between her thighs. Everly tensed. Ellis immediately stilled. Everly? I've never. Understanding dawned in his eyes. We don't have to do this now, he said gently. I want to, she insisted. I'm just nervous. Ellis kissed her softly. I'll take care of you. I promise. She believed him. Ellis's hand resumed its path, gently parting her thighs. When his fingers found her center, Everly whimpered. So wet, Ellis murmured. Is this all for me? Yes. He circled her sensitive bud with his thumb, and Everly's hips bucked. Easy, he soothed. I've got you. He worked her slowly, building pleasure with patient, deliberate touches. When he slid one finger inside her, Everly gasped at the intrusion. All right? Ellis asked. Yes. Don't stop. He added a second finger, stretching her carefully. Everly felt pressure, a slight burn, but mostly just an overwhelming sensation. Ellis's thumb continued its maddening circles while his fingers moved inside her. The pleasure built, higher, tighter, until Everly shattered. She cried out, her body clenching around his fingers as waves of pleasure rolled through her. Ellis worked her through it, murmuring praise against her skin. When she finally came down, trembling and breathless, Ellis withdrew his hand and brought it to his mouth. He sucked his fingers clean, his eyes never leaving hers. Everly's core clenched at the sight. You taste incredible, Ellis said, his voice rough. I want to touch you, Everly said. You don't have to. I want to. Ellis groaned but lay back. Everly sat up, her hands shaking slightly as she reached for the laces of his trousers. Ellis helped her, kicking them off along with his boots, and then he was bare before her. Everly stared. He was impressive, large, hard, straining toward her. Don't be intimidated, Ellis said with a hint of amusement. Easy for you to say. She reached out tentatively and wrapped her hand around him. Ellis hissed, his hips flexing. Like this? She asked. Yes, just like that. She stroked him experimentally, learning what made him groan, what made his breathing quicken. When she grew bolder, Ellis caught her wrist. Stop, he said roughly. Or this will be over embarrassingly fast. Everly smiled, feeling powerful. Ellis pulled her down for a kiss. Are you ready? He asked. Yes. He positioned himself between her thighs, the tip of him pressing against her entrance. This might hurt, he warned, but only for a moment. I trust you. Ellis pushed in slowly. Everly tensed at the stretch. Breathe, Ellis murmured. Just breathe. She did, and he slid deeper. The burn intensified. Tears pricked her eyes. Ellis froze. Do you want me to stop? No, just give me a moment. He stayed perfectly still, kissing her gently until she relaxed. Then he pushed in further, inch by inch, until he was fully seated inside her. Everly felt impossibly full. All right? Ellis asked, his voice strained. Yes, you can move. Ellis withdrew slightly, then pushed back in. Slowly, carefully, learning her body. The burn faded, replaced by a different kind of pressure. A good pressure. Everly's hips moved instinctively, meeting his thrusts. That's it, Ellis praised. Take what you need. He increased his pace gradually, still careful but less restrained. Everly felt pleasure building again. Different this time. Deeper. Ellis, she gasped. I know. Let go. He reached between them and found her sensitive bud. The added stimulation sent her over the edge. She cried out his name as she shattered. Ellis followed moments later, his release pulsing inside her. They collapsed together, breathing hard. Ellis rolled to the side, pulling her with him so she was draped across his chest. Are you all right? He asked when he could speak. Perfect, Everly murmured. That was. Yes. They lay in satisfied silence for a long while. Then Everly said sleepily, We're going to do that again, right? Ellis laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. Absolutely. They spent the rest of the day in bed, learning from each other, laughing, loving. When evening came, Ellis fed her by hand, then drew her another bath. This time, they bathed together. Ellis washed her hair again, his touch tender. Everly washed his back, tracing the scars she was learning to recognize. "How did you get this one?" she asked, touching a particularly long scar across his shoulder blade. "Border skirmish. 3 years ago. Did it hurt? At the time. And now? Now it just reminds me I survived." Everly kissed it. Ellis shivered. "You're dangerous," he murmured. "Me? Isis and Fru. Yes. You make me forget everything except you." Everly smiled against his skin. "Good." That night, they lay tangled together, skin to skin. Ellis's hand traced lazy patterns on her back. "Everly? What you said earlier, about feeling alive, did you mean it?" She lifted her head to look at him. "Yes, I feel the same," Ellis admitted. "You make me feel human. Not just the Alpha King, just Ellis." Everly's heart swelled. "I like Ellis," she said softly. "I like Everly." She smiled. "We're quite the pair." "Yes," Ellis agreed. "We are." He pulled her closer, and she sighed contentedly. "Ellis?" "Yes. Thank you." "For what?" "For hearing me. For seeing me. For making me feel like I matter." Ellis tilted her face up to his. "You do matter," he said fiercely. "More than you know." He kissed her, and Everly knew, with absolute certainty, that she had found something rare, something worth fighting for, something real. The next few days passed in a haze of intimacy and discovery. They made love again. And again. Each time is different. Sometimes slow and tender, sometimes urgent and desperate. Always incredible. Ellis taught her what her body was capable of. Everly taught him what it meant to be truly seen. They talked for hours. About everything. About nothing. Ellis told her about the burden of leadership, the loneliness of power. Everly told him about growing up Omega, always being told she was less. They laughed together. They cried together. Healed together. And somewhere in those quiet, stolen moments, they fell completely in love. On the 10th day, reality intruded. A knock sounded at the door. Ellis growled. "Go away." "Alpha King," came Silas's voice. "Forgive the interruption, but there's a matter that requires your attention." Ellis sighed. "What is it?" "Caden Cummings has called for a formal hearing." Everly tensed. Ellis's arm tightened around her. "I'll handle it," he said. "When?" "Tomorrow." Ellis looked at Everly. "Are you ready?" She thought about it. A week ago, she would have said no. But now, wrapped in Ellis's arms, stronger in body and spirit, she felt different. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready." Ellis kissed her forehead. "Then we face it together." The keep was changing. Everly felt it even from within Ellis's chambers. Whispers followed her when she walked the halls. Some are curious, some approving, some are hostile. Cassandra avoided her completely. Bria watched her with thinly veiled resentment. Silas offered her a tentative nod when they crossed paths. Caden watched her like prey. Everly tried to ignore it, but Ellis noticed. "Stay close to me," he said one morning. "I'm fine." "Everly," she sighed. "I'm not afraid of him." "You should be." She looked at Ellis, surprised by the edge in his voice. "He can't hurt me," she said. "You won't let him." "No," Ellis agreed. "I won't." But his expression remained troubled. The council called a meeting. Ellis attended. Everly was not invited. She paced his chambers, restless and uneasy. When Ellis returned hours later, his expression was carefully neutral. "What happened?" Everly asked. "Caden is pushing back." "On what?" "On my refusal to enforce the fated bond." Everly's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" Ellis crossed the room and took her hands. "It means he's trying to use tradition to force my hand." "Can he?" No. Then why do you look worried? Ellis hesitated. Because he's not working alone. There are others who believe Omegas should have no say in their bonds. They're using you as a test case. Everly pulled her hands free. I'm endangering you. No. I am, she insisted. Your authority is being questioned because of me. My authority is being questioned because I'm challenging an unjust system, Ellis corrected. That's not your fault. But if I wasn't here, then nothing would change, Ellis said firmly. And I don't want that. Everly looked at him, her chest tight. I can leave, she said quietly. Ellis's expression went very still. What? If it would make things easier. It wouldn't. Ellis. No. His voice was sharp now. You're not leaving. You don't get to decide that. Yes, Ellis said, stepping closer. I do. Everly's breath caught. They stood inches apart, the air between them charged. You can't keep me here if I want to go, she said. I know. Then, but I'm asking you not to. Everly stared at him. Please, Ellis said softly. Stay. Her resolve crumbled. This is going to get worse before it gets better, she whispered. I know. People are going to hate me. I don't care. You should. Ellis reached up and cupped her face gently. The only thing I care about is that you're safe. And whole. And here. Everly closed her eyes. I'm afraid, she admitted. So am I. She opened her eyes. You are? Terrified, Ellis said honestly. But I'm more afraid of what happens if you leave. Everly's heart twisted. I don't want to go, she whispered. Then don't. She leaned into his touch, her hands coming up to rest against his chest. Okay. Ellis exhaled slowly, relief clear on his face. They stayed like that for a long moment. Then Everly said, What do we do now? We fight, Ellis said simply. Against tradition? Against anything that tries to take you from me. Everly's breath hitched. Ellis. He kissed her. Gentle. Tentative. A question, not a demand. Everly answered by pressing closer, her hands curling into his shirt. The kiss deepened. Slow. Careful. Like they were both afraid the other might break. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. I didn't plan that, Ellis said. I'm not complaining. His mouth curved. Good. Everly smiled. Then her expression sobered. This doesn't solve the problem. No, Ellis agreed. But it helps. The next day, Caden made his move. He appeared in the main hall, flanked by 2 council members. Ellis was there. So was Everly. Alpha King, Caden said formally. I invoke the right of fated claim. The hall went silent. Ellis's expression didn't change. Denied. You cannot deny what fate has decreed. I can, Ellis said evenly. And I am. Caden's jaw tightened. The bond exists whether you acknowledge it or not. The bond, Ellis replied, does not override her will. She is Omega. She is a person, Ellis interrupted, and she has already refused you. Caden's gaze shifted to Everly. Is that true? Everly stepped forward. Yes. You would reject fate itself. I would reject you, she said clearly. Fate has nothing to do with it. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Caden's expression darkened. This is unprecedented. Good, Ellis said. Let it be a precedent. Caden looked at him coldly. You're making a mistake. No, Ellis said. I'm correcting one. Caden turned and left without another word. But Everly knew this wasn't over. That night, she couldn't sleep. Ellis found her standing by the window, staring out at the dark grounds. You should be resting, he said quietly. I can't. He moved to stand beside her. What's wrong? Everything, she said. This is my fault. It's not. He's going to keep pushing. Let him. Everly looked at Ellis. What if he wins? He won't. You don't know that. Ellis turned to face her fully. I know that I will do everything in my power to protect you. And I know that I won't lose. Everly wanted to believe him. But fear whispered louder than hope. "What if I'm not worth all this trouble?" she asked quietly. Ellis's expression softened. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You are worth everything," he said simply. Everly's eyes burned. "I don't understand you." "You don't have to, but I want to." Ellis smiled faintly. "Then we have time." Everly leaned into him, resting her forehead against his chest. His arms came around her, steady and sure. And for the first time in days, the fear quieted. Just a little. Just enough. The realm was watching. Word had spread, and Omega refused her fated mate. The Alpha King supported her. It was unprecedented. It was scandalous. It was everything traditional wolves feared. But it was also hope. Omegas across the realm began to whisper. What if we could choose? What if fate wasn't absolute? What if we mattered? The whispers grew louder, and the old guard grew desperate. Cassandra called for a formal hearing. Ellis couldn't refuse without appearing tyrannical, so he agreed. The hearing was held in the Great Hall, packed with wolves from across the realm. Caden stood on one side, flanked by supporters. Everly stood on the other, with Ellis beside her. Cassandra presided, her expression carefully neutral. "This hearing," she began, "will determine whether the Alpha King has overstepped his authority in refusing to enforce a fated bond." Ellis's jaw tightened. Everly's hands were clenched at her sides. Caden spoke first. "The bond between myself and Everly Clark is fated, decreed by forces older than this realm. To deny it is to deny the natural order itself." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Ellis stepped forward. "The natural order does not include imprisonment and starvation." Silence. "Everly Clark was locked in a cell," Ellis continued, his voice carrying. "She was denied food, water, basic dignity, all because she refused a bond she did not want." More murmurs. "These ones are uncertain." Cassandra spoke. "That was an unfortunate." "It was deliberate," Ellis interrupted. "And it will not happen again." Caden's expression hardened. "The bond must be honored." "Why?" Everly's voice rang out. Everyone turned to look at her. She stepped forward, her chin lifted. "Why must I honor a bond I never wanted?" she asked. "Why must I give myself to someone simply because fate decided it?" Caden's eyes narrowed. "Because it is the way." "The way," Everly repeated. "The way that silences Omegas. The way that treats us as possessions. The way that locked me in a cell and left me to die." Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "I refuse to believe that is fate's will," she said. "I refuse to believe I was born only to be owned." The hall was utterly silent. Everly looked at Caden. "You say the bond is fated, but I feel nothing for you. No pull, no desire, no connection." Caden's jaw tightened. "The bond exists. Then it exists without my consent," Everly said. "And I will not honor something I did not choose." She turned to face the crowd. "I am Omega," she said clearly. "But I am also a person. And I deserve the right to choose my own path." The silence stretched. Then, from the back of the hall, a voice called out, "She's right." Heads turned. A young Omega stepped forward, trembling but determined. "She's right," the Omega repeated. "We deserve choices." Another voice joined, then another. Omegas across the hall began to speak. Cassandra's expression tightened. Caden looked furious, but Ellis smiled. He stepped beside Everly and took her hand. "The realm is changing," he said quietly, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "And those who refuse to change with it will be left behind." He looked at Cassandra. "This hearing is over." "Alpha King." "Over," Ellis repeated. He turned and walked out, Everly's hand still in his. The hall erupted behind them. In the privacy of his chambers, Ellis pulled Everly into his arms. She was shaking. "You were incredible," he murmured against her hair. "I was terrified." "I know. Did I just start a rebellion?" Ellis laughed softly. "Possibly." Everly pulled back to look at him. "Are you angry?" "No," Worried? A little. Proud? Ellis smiled. Very. Everly's breath caught. I meant what I said, she whispered. I don't feel the bond with Caden. I know, but I feel something with you. Ellis went still. Everly reached up and touched his face. I feel it every time you look at me, every time you speak, every time you're near. Everly, I don't know if it's a bond, she continued. I don't know if it's fate, but I know it's real. Ellis closed his eyes. You don't have to. I want to, she said firmly. I want to choose you. Not because fate says I should, but because I want to. Ellis opened his eyes, and the emotion there nearly undid her. Are you sure? Yes. This will complicate everything. I don't care. Ellis laughed, the sound rough and disbelieving. You're going to ruin me. Good, Everly said. You ruined me first. He kissed her, deep, claiming, but this time, it was mutual. Everly kissed him back with everything she had. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. I choose you, she whispered. I choose you too, Ellis said. And between them, something shifted. Not a bond forced by fate, but something deeper. Something chosen. The intimacy that followed was slow, gentle. Ellis laid her on the bed with reverence, his hands trembling slightly. We don't have to. I want to, Everly said. If you change your mind. I won't. Ellis kissed her again, his touch careful. He worshipped her with his hands, his mouth, his body. Every touch was a question. Every response was an answer. This time, when he entered her, there was no pain, only pleasure, only rightness. Ellis moved slowly, watching her face, learning what made her sigh, what made her moan. Everly clung to him, her nails digging into his shoulders. Ellis, I know. Please. I've got you. And he did. He held her through every wave, every shudder, every moment of bliss. When they finally collapsed together, tangled and breathless, Everly felt tears slip down her cheeks. Did I hurt you? Ellis asked immediately. No, she whispered. You made me feel whole. Ellis pulled her closer, his arms tight around her. You are whole, he murmured, and you're mine, and I'm yours. Everly smiled against his chest. Yes, she said softly. We are. The realm did change, slowly at first, then faster. Omegas began to speak up, to refuse bonds they didn't want, to demand choices. Some alphas resisted, but Ellis made it clear that resistance would not be tolerated. The old traditions crumbled, new ones formed, and at the center of it all stood Everly Clark, the Omega who refused to disappear, the woman who survived hunger and chose love. Caden eventually left the realm, unable to accept the new order. Cassandra stepped down from the council. Bria followed. Silas remained, becoming one of Ellis's most trusted advisors. And Everly? Everly stood beside Ellis as his equal, not as an Omega who needed protection, but as a partner who had earned her place. Months passed. The keep grew warmer. Laughter returned to the halls. One evening, Everly stood in the garden, watching the sunset. Ellis found her there, wrapping his arms around her from behind. What are you thinking? He asked. That I'm happy, she said simply. Good. And that if someone had told me a year ago that I'd be standing here with you, I would have thought they were insane. Ellis laughed. Fair. Everly turned in his arms. Do you ever regret it? Regret what? Choosing me over tradition. Ellis's expression softened. Never. Even when it's difficult? Especially then. Everly smiled. You're impossible. You love it. I do, she admitted. Ellis kissed her forehead. I love you. Everly's heart swelled. I love you too, she whispered. And in the fading light, surrounded by flowers and warmth and the promise of tomorrow, Everly Clark realized something. She had survived. She had chosen. And she had won. Not because fate decreed it, but because she refused to let anyone else decide her worth. And that, she thought, was the most powerful thing of all. If you made it to the end, thank you. Stories like this only survive because people like you choose to listen, feel, and stay. If Everly and Ellis's journey meant something to you, please subscribe to Cold Blood Empire, like the video, and share it with someone who loves intense, emotional wolf romance. Your support helps this channel grow and helps stories where the silenced finally win get told. Until the next story, stay fierce, stay loyal,